Yes, we have Levi from host and creator of the Forefront Radio back with us, and we want to touch on the news story about Trye Nichols and give you some updates with this matter. Go ahead and share.
Alrighty. I'm Levi, the host of the Forefront Radio. We'll get right into it. We're talking about the killing of Trye Nichols on January the 7th, 2023. Five black officers from Memphis, Tennessee, the police department severely beat 29-year-old Trye Nichols, a black man, during a traffic stop in Memphis, Tennessee. Nichols died 3 days later in the hospital. The officers stopped Nichols for allegedly reckless driving, pulling him over, and they used pepper spray and a taser to tase him. Nichols was hospitalized in critical condition and died 3 days later. During the incident, Nichols managed to break away. When officers caught up with Nichols, they beat him for about 3 minutes, punching and kicking him in the head and striking him on the back with a baton while he was restrained. Released footage of the traffic incident showed Nichols never fought back against the officers. The officers were later fired on January the 20th. So let's look at a timeline. On January 7th, the traffic stop occurred. The beating took place that same day. January the 10th, he died in the hospital. And then 10 days later, January the 20th, the officers were fired. Okay. It says on January 26th, they were arrested and charged with murder, kidnapping, assault, and official misconduct. Two firefighters who were on the scene and the ambulance that took Nichols to the hospital were relieved of duty pending an investigation. So they were just firing everybody across the board. On January
Mhm.
27th, the Memphis Police Department released 4 clips of edited video showing events that occurred between the time of 8:24 and 9:02 p.m. The autopsy commissioned by his family found an extensive bleeding caused by severe beating. The TBI, which is the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and the United States Department of Justice are both having open investigations. And that's from Wikipedia thus far.
Okay. And so there have been some additional updates with additional members of the police department being fired and such. But before we go there, what was your immediate reaction, as a black man, as a father, just seeing the video of the beating?
I personally did not want to be traumatized because I know that there are countless videos of black men being beat, lynched, tased, and other things of that nature. So I did not want
Mhm.
to add to the trauma. But from what I understand, due to the circumstances, they beat that man worse than Rodney King, and he died
Mhm.
worse than the manner of George Floyd, which got international acclaim. As a father, I
Mhm.
would definitely seek some sort of punitive these individuals as well as the city. As far as the legal ramifications and the lawsuits are concerned, we'll leave that up to the people responsible for that. But from my perspective, it was an egregious act that should have never took place.
Definitely. There's, I guess, three different vantage points of the beating, where you can see very close up. There's even one far away, and they've really examined it. um, took some time before they released the video, and I think they've even counted like the strikes and even got to the point of when they think he may have lost functions and things like that with his condition, taking 3 days to pass away. It's just a really, I think it's one of the most disturbing videos with a police civilian exchange I've seen. It's, really brutal, just very brutal. Like you mentioned, Rodney King, that beating was very brutal. And, where they use the nightstick, different types of force was exerted, even like kicking him, his hands were behind his back, just where he's restrained, can't even fight back. Just a very brutal display against another human being. And it was very sad to watch. And it makes me very sad, you know what I mean? So I just want to share our reactions because I know I've seen some people react and respond differently to it. I mean, some people have become numb because we've seen so much violence lately in the news and things like that. And then I'm glad you were able to protect your peace and not choose to um, digest that, because it really was a lot. It was.
At this point, it's like the United States wants to market black murder and
Mhm.
broadcast it and normalize it so much so that people are desensitized. And they
Mhm.
won't even show a video of a dog getting shot, let alone a video of a black person being abused. Usually, when they have these
Mhm.
incidents, they'll say, viewer discretion is advised. We advise not to watch all of it, and they'll blur out stuff. But usually in these cases, when it happened to us, they just show all the evidence all on the TV, and everybody's just traumatized, and then now they just find it normal. The crazy thing about it is this same exact thing
Mm.
is actually prophesied in the scriptures, where the wicked in their pride they persecute against the poor. So you'll read it in the
Mhm.
scriptures about oppression that takes place, and that irritates the Most High to the utmost. Those that operate wickedly in this society, their mouth is full of cursing, they're full of deceit and fraud. There's always some sort of conjecture that they make up to try to defend and justify heinous actions of others. Their mouth is full of vanity and lies through the media, lies through, the whole blue wall of silence that they have.
Mhm.
But they go around in the cities and in the villages and in the secret places. They murder the innocent, and their eyes are privately set against the poor. And what do I mean by that? Usually, in these instances, they always target the poor, the disenfranchised, those that are
Mm.
so called quote unquote minorities. You don't see a lot of this happening to some rich guy from Beverly Hills or some doctor that works in some sort of expensive place. You usually see it from those that are impoverished. You see what I'm saying? So it's a really tragic situation, and I hope that more evidence brings forth to kind of deal with this issue in society.
Definitely. We mentioned that there have been some updates with as far as arrests of additional people involved in the matter. I wanted to share that two additional Memphis police officers, including one white officer who was seen encountering Trye Nichols initially in the traffic stop. So he was one of the individuals relieved of duty, and his name is Officer Preston Hemphill. And there was a second, or I guess that would make the seventh, unidentified, who they didn't name at this time, who has been relieved also. And in addition to those two police officers that have been relieved of duty after these five, there are three EMTs from the Memphis Police Department who were fired for not responding quickly after the higher ups have reviewed the matter. And I'm glad that they did that because they did not, offer him care in an expedient way. So they definitely deserve to be reprimanded for that.
I consider this incident that occurred, and the thought that comes to my mind is, why is it that the people that are in charge completely be fired as well, due to the fact that they're the ones that created this alleged Scorpion unit, and they had officers in
Okay.
that unit that were under 10 years of experience. Now, remember, when people are trained in the police departments across America, it's not like a constable that you just give uh, traffic violations and tickets and stuff. Their
Hmm.
training is like boot camp for the military, for the Navy, for the
Oh,
uh,
for
uh,
sure.
Marine Corps. So they're already coming out of training within less than 6 years of experience, majority of them. So in
Hmm.
their mind, they're aggressively tactically going against citizens as insurgents, as terrorists, as prisoners of war. That's how they treat the innocent. It is not innocent until proven guilty. It's let me harass you, let me cause harm to you, some sort of psychological trauma. And this isn't the first time that this department in itself has dealt with abuse cases.
Hmm. Right. You mentioned that special unit that they were a part of that was called Scorpion, which this information comes from NBC News, stands for Street Crimes Operations to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods. And actually, a lot of reports have offered that a lot of cities across the United States have these special units, and you see, issues and abuse with these units. What do you think about that? That it's kind of a trend.
I think it's the militarization of these
Hmm.
slave catchers, and I want to make sure I say slave catchers because the institution of the United States Police Departments were created for slave catching. Those slave catchers used to
Right.
catch ex-slaves and put them in bondage again, bring them back to their alleged slave master, lynch them, brutalize them, kill them, maim them, all those things they were doing when they deputized normal citizens. Now, fast forward to our time frame, those same slave catchers have evolved to be trained in military tactics. They have drones, they have tanks, they have SWATs,
Mm.
they have flashbang grenades, they have all type of technology that is used primarily against citizens. And it's insane to me within a so-called free society that they have
Mhm.
military grade weaponry against the citizens to use. Okay.
Yes, definitely. You mentioned that, or you've made that comparison to the slave catchers, like the kind of the origins of police, right? With
Definitely,
slave
definitely.
catching.
How the police started was through
Hmm.
slave catching.
Yeah. And, during those times, our Black people's bodies would be on display. And it's kind of, we really can make the connection that that's what's going on now with this video being shared with the close up image of his, deceased body beaten with the bruises and such, just on display for people's amusement, even. Some people are upset. You see some people impacted to, crying, shedding a tear for him. And then some people are really kind of oogling and ogling over it and just sharing it in kind of a nasty, numb way without any respect to, a deceased human being. So
That's a really good
that's
point. Where is Blue
mhm.
Lives Matter when it comes to this? They quiet. They don't got nothing to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, we
Because
gotta.
when it was happening where Caucasian people were beating up on black people, they were like, "Oh, to find out the investigation, let's wait till all the facts come out,
Mm,
But now they're like, "Oh, fire them, prosecute them." I mean, think of the time frame. Usually, when an incident happens, right, with a
mhm,
Caucasian person involved, it's like weeks, months. Like they let the situation die down off of the news before they bring it to court, before they indict, all of that. But these brothers
mhm.
that got involved with this situation, they threw the book, the hammer, the leaf, the period, everything they could throw at them, they throwing at them.
Well, it's still early yet, but we'll be interested to see if they have, the support of that blue wall that has been there for so many others. And if they have other, like minded supporters, your Ricky Schroders and people who want to drop large amounts on their bail and things like that. Well, they're out on bail from my understanding, but yeah, we'll be interested to see if they get that support. Um, but yeah, there's another new development that we want to share, or I guess some other details rather we'll share. So the one officer, or actually, I guess two officers in the matter had a prior accusations of excessive aggressiveness, if you will, where the one, Tadarius Bean, who was 24 years old, which is, a very young person. So he had not been on the force long, I don't believe. I think none of them, like you said, longer than 6 years, but he's 24. And he had a prior incident with his fraternity in a very gruesome beating, which the Daily Mail .com reflected in his past. And then another officer involved, Demetrius Haley, had a prior 2016 lawsuit brought against him from an individual when he was a corrections officer for a violent beating in the Shelby County Corrections. So it seems like there was one other incident from their prior, I think, yeah. So someone else had a 2015 incident in additional incident in the prison where he was a correctional officer. A lot of these officers work in the prisons as COs before they go and become uh you know police officers. So there's some history of being excessive with the force with these guys. So I wanted to bring that up. And then I think as of today, or maybe even yesterday, there's a possible new motive where you mentioned initially they were saying that he was alleged to have been they were looking at him for what, reckless driving or something like that. But there's a new claim, which I guess it may be on the rumor side. It hasn't been, defined, or I guess backed by the officials yet. But there's a motive that, that Tyree Nichols may have been romantically involved with one of the alleged officers. And this story has kind of went rampant on the internet. Um, that there may have been, they kind of sought him out because of this. Is kind of the latest. What is your thought about that particular, I guess, rumor, if you will, that he may have been personally involved with one of the officers' exes?
I'm glad you
So,
asked that question. I am
mhm,
glad you asked that question. Let's rewind a little bit though. Let's consider this thing. Out of 5 officers, right? A majority, let's say 3 to 4 out of 5, that's a large percentage, right?
mhm,
Had a previous where they were accused of harming someone, almost fatally beating someone, whether they
right,
were a prison mate, that one of the ex-cops had a previous civil lawsuit, okay, that it was dismissed, but it still was on his record that incident occurred.
right,
Okay, Demetrius Haley, the 30-year-old, he was accused, right, of partaking in violent beatings. So for them to have that type of history on these people and say, oh yeah, let's put you on an elite squad, a SWAT team as it were, and enable
mhm,
these individuals that have a past of brutally beating on people to be involved in SWAT.
mhm,
And then the other guy, I think he was in Tadarius, he was in Omega Psi Phi Eta Zeta chapter in Mississippi. Okay, it's on his
mhm,
LinkedIn channel. So now touching on what you mentioned with the baby mama, right? So there's no quote unquote official, right? But it's going viral on Twitter, on YouTube, where they're mentioning that Trye Nichols worked at FedEx. And the cop, I think his name is Hadley, Officer Hadley, had
Mm-hmm.
a ex woman that he has a child with that also worked at FedEx. And now all of a sudden, Trye Nichols is getting beat down, and they're alleging that that officer took pictures of the beating and sent it to his ex-wife,
Mm-hmm.
which tells me if he's sending pictures to her, either, because I'm a critical thinker, I try to look at both perspectives. Either the woman told him about the affair, he knew about it, and used that as an impetus
Mm-hmm.
to aggressively address it, got with his frat brothers and the boys in blue, let them know about it. Hey, pull this guy over. Or it could have been
Mm-hmm.
just a completely random incident and coincidence, right? But I don't like coincidences. I don't like coincidences because it's too like the luck of the draw that you would beat
Yeah.
on a man and it'd be the same man that allegedly slept with your ex-wife who you have a child with. That's too close for comfort. You know what I mean?
Right.
Too close for comfort. So they
Right.
say birds of a feather flock together. They also say you'll never find a chihuahua amongst wolves. So all the wolves stick together in the pack if they all have previous incidences of violent occurrence. And now this pops up. Yeah, of
Mm-hmm.
course the man is going to be beaten to death because they already have previous accounts of them beating up on people. That's my thoughts
Right.
on it.
And that made me think about what, yeah, when you broke it down like that, um, aside from the issue with the woman that, they're looking for this special unit, and I think like they do like drug busts and things like that. They saw what was in their past and they didn't care. So did they seek out, the ruffians, or they just didn't care? You know what I mean? It could be interesting to know if they, look for people who were brutal, on purpose, maybe. That's kind of a
Right.
just
Because think about it. You can go past, right, the white supremacist ideology and see how they operate. They'll say, okay, instead of having white men on the force and have some sort of racially charged, motivated situation, they'll say, let's hire these black officers that have minimal experience, that have only been in the force less
Mhm,
than 10 years, put them on an elite special group, rile them up like they're going to war and going to town with the citizens. You gotta have law and order and fight the good fight of white supremacy against the evil black
mhm,
people. That's how they indoctrinate these people to go to war. Like how can you get I'll give you an example.
mm,
How can you convince an 18-year-old child to strap on an M16, a vest, and go overseas to fight for their country and shoot at citizens, bring them back over here. You could be a police officer. Oh yeah, you could be a firefighter. Oh yeah, you could be. This is the mindset of they think that's logical. There's many people that
mhm,
are in the military that transition into law enforcement. There's many people, as you've
right.
noted in several different episodes, that have involvement to white supremacist organizations, street gangs, all of that, like the executioners in LA, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
this is not nothing new under the sun. This is just one facet of instead of put white people on it, let's put a black face on it and let the black people blame black people for beating on black people.
Right, and then they can't blame,
Maybe I'm just
the
thinking too hard. I'm a critical thinker.
right. No, I get it. I get it. I follow for sure. And then that way, that kind of pulls out the white, the racial thing. But I mean, that's still a factor. And I know we've had some conversations on the Clubhouse app with black and whites. You were there for some of these, and they say, "Well, how can you say it has something to do with race still?" And it's like, they just don't get it that it's still a factor. It really is still a factor. But yeah, when you break it down like that, that's interesting. Okay, but so new information that could possibly be facts, right, with this woman situation. That's a whole nother layer of drama to this, very brutal, just, brutal incident against another human being. And I hate that, to hear that someone would just, have this personal vendetta and just unload rage like that on somebody. And then drag others into it
I
because
agree
this
with
is
you.
impacting their careers forever.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the thing to consider, I want to look at both sides of the equation. Okay.
Hmm.
Let's say Tyree was completely innocent from the matter, right? He had no idea that this man was a police officer, right? He gets involved with the woman. The woman doesn't share with that man that she has a jealous ex, right?
Mm,
So now either he didn't know at all about this man and ends up getting killed innocently, or let's look at the other side of the equation now, right? Let's say he does know about the relationship between that man and that woman, right? And he gets involved with this woman. In ancient times, right, when you had a married family together, anyone that got involved with adultery, fornication, both the man involved and the woman would be stoned because number one, that family unit is broken now. They call it home wrecking nowadays because of the indiscretions that take place. Okay. So, from one hand, you have he's completely innocent. He doesn't know about the situation involving a jealous ex husband. So, he's not at fault necessarily because the police, wrong place at the wrong time, should have never dealt with the woman. Or it could be the other side of the equation where that woman knew that Tyrese Nichols and her, they were both aware of the jealous ex-boyfriend or ex-cop,
mhm.
right? And she antagonized the ex-cop like, hey, I'm dealing with my new man. My new man is taking care of me. It's over. Because why would he take photographs of the beating and send it to her? Unless she was
Right.
egging him on like, you can't do nothing. I'm not dealing with you, da 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 da. What would drive a man to convince his buddies we got to go beat this dude ass? You understand? I'm a critical thinker. I'm looking at the perspective of, okay, either Nichols is completely absolved of any wrongdoing in the situation. Nothing excuses them beating his ass. Don't get me wrong. There's no excuse for that. They beat that man worse
Okay.
than Rodney King, and they deserve everything that the law has on it. However, I
Right.
always look at what's the motivation, what's the
Right.
intrinsic factors relating to that situation occurring. If that woman is involved in some way, type of form, it's going to come out in the investigation. So now you have Tyree Nichols, who has a 4-year-old child. He's no longer a part of his child's
Mm,
life. You have
mhm.
officers that have children. Now their lives are impacted by potentially going over jail over a simple misunderstanding that should have never took place. Traffic violations
Definitely.
should not result in death.
Right. And you wonder, like, they have these officers on video, this new information, is scandalous and salacious as it may sound. That officer may end up relying on this narrative to save his, self from some time or something. Because, like, I think we had kind of talked about the possibility of, maybe he did know him, or recognize him, like, oh man, this guy, he even caught me, I know I'm toast now, you know what I mean? And but I think even in that second option you put out there, I still feel bad for him because it wasn't a fair fight. It was a dirty fight. If you're gonna go imano with somebody, this is a dirty fight, right?
Yeah, you're right. The fact that they jumped him is basically like a high school street brawl where you get all your brothers to jump a dude. And instead of you fighting like a man one on one, if you have a grievance with the
Yeah.
brother, you go and get other men involved with your personal matters. If that's what is the motive of this situation.
right, exactly. If we're going to go down this road, and like you said, this officer may say, like, well, this guy was harassing me, and who knows what kind of story he may pull out the sky trying to save his own neck. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually support this narrative. Usually when there's narratives like this, they always try to like steer the public away from it, like, oh, that's just gossip and rumors. But it could very well be a factor in, plausible, of him working at FedEx and the other person. It really could be something. It really
Black
could.
folks, we investigative reporters, we'll find out all type of stuff. The fact that that came out and people were posting that the dude's wife was sleeping with Tyree Nichols, like, there's no reason to make that up. I'm trying to
Yeah,
figure
that's
out
why
in
it
my head, like,
sounds
what
weird.
reason. Yeah, exactly, right? What reason would someone have to lie about that and post it on social media? I mean, there are internet trolls, there are like
Yeah.
sensationalist people, but that specific of a detail to know that the wife, one of the officers, to name the officer, to name where he was employed at, right? He worked at FedEx, the ex-wife worked at FedEx. How do you know that information if it's not true? You know?
Well, right. And then FedEx is huge in Memphis, right? Like it's really one of their largest entities there. So, if I think we saw some YouTuber, he had her name, but wasn't going to release it. And I hate that he even did that, because it's probably going to be all over the internet, in a matter of hours or something, because even though things are so big, it's so small. So, but so yeah, we'll see, if where this
I agree
narrative, if
with you.
anything.
I agree with
Yeah,
you. It's
yeah.
horrible that they did that.
Hmm.
Let me ask you,
And
what
yeah.
are your thoughts on number one, the reckless driving, right? I don't recall seeing any footage of the reckless driving. Did you see any footage of the reckless driving?
Right. And in fact, the higher ups made a note that they could not find footage to substantiate that claim. So that's why it looks like that was, a fib, or narrative they tried to sell that wasn't, real, basically.
Wow, so it's a complete lie. Okay,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
okay. So
Mhm.
then my next question that came to mind then was, if if she's involved somehow in this way, antagonistically towards one of the officers, right? Then how many other stories don't get revealed about black men that either go to jail or get imprisoned or get killed due to affairs that occur in our community? That's another
Mhm.
angle to look at. The amount of deaths that are related to some sort of trifling situation, whether it's cheating spouses, domestic disturbances, things of that nature. That's something that we should look at. Does the officer have any past, any of the officers have any past of domestic violence towards their women? We already see that there's accounts of them
Right.
abusing people, but what about their spouses? You see what I'm saying?
Definitely. And I know we were
And I want to touch
scheduled.
on the fact, how the hell you got a name Emmett Martin?
Right? Yeah, I'm sure his mom might not be too proud right
Your
now,
name
but
Emmett
yeah.
Martin. What the hell?
Yeah.
Emmett Till,
I
Martin
saw
Luther King. You got civil
something.
rights names, bro. You going around beating down people?
Yeah. I didn't do a whole lot of looking into the response, or early, maybe be accountable. You know, a lot of people are looking at this chief. It's a female, Sherilyn Davis, and I saw something today that the sports journalist Jason Whitlock kind of said something negative against her, and like, oh, this is why it happened, because you got this single black woman as a chief over there, and it's like, oh, okay, so that's what we're doing. And I didn't even know that people were
Yeah,
kind of like,
Jason
oh, she's a
Shitlock. I don't like
woman.
that dude.
Yeah, that guy.
Jason
But
Shitlock. He always trying to defend white supremacy. To hell with him.
yeah, I don't know who's worse, him or Candace Owens. Yeah.
Candace
Really
Owens will
bad,
give some
really bad.
statistical data that's actually helpful in some instances,
Hmm.
and other times it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't be for black people and you dating. Yeah, we already know you white supremacist too. You just an Oreo.
Well,
What they call them, Oreo? You chocolate on the outside, but inside you creamy. Yeah, we know you creamy
I
in your
don't
feelings,
like
bro. We
that
know.
term. I don't
You don't
like
like
that
that term?
term, but
Okay, I'll use
I
another.
don't,
I'll use another
because they use it
Negropean. How about
against
that one?
people. But yeah, but anyway, about the point was about the chief, maybe she should fall on her sword for this. She's probably going to end up stepping down like they all do, in similar cases. It'll get close to the trial, and here she'll come stepping down. What do you think about that?
Right. Because they're gonna say this happened under your watch.
So
So
she's
if
responsible,
this happened
even
under
though
your
she's
watch,
yeah,
you're responsible.
even though she's been very sympathetic to the family. And I don't know if she said I'm a single mother too, or I don't even know if she is a single mother, or maybe, I guess that's facts if someone put that out there. But like, this happened on her watch, and I think they stepped down rather than waiting to get fired, because it's better for their benefits or something. But she's probably going to step down.
Yeah, this puts just another stain on the impact of policing in America as it
Mhm.
relates to the Lost Tribes of Israel, people of color. And I feel sorry for the children that are involved having to
Yeah.
lose, a parent or some parents in the situation. Because I always think, how can this impact the next generation forward? You know?
Oh, definitely. That's a sad part of the story too, that we have, family these men represent families that have now been broken forever. And yeah, and just, a
Mhm.
really poor choice resulted in this. But it sounds like there's just so much developing, and we haven't even got to the indictment yet. Really, we just got charges, so there's going to be so many more developments. I appreciate you reaching out to tackle some of these details with me. Anything else to share on the developments of this story?
I really hope that they get prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and I hope they take a serious look at policing in America and their involvement in our communities, because we say things like we want black officers over us.
Hmm.
However, if these officers brand of justice that's extreme because they have something to quote unquote prove, then that's basically, our eyes have yet failed for a vain help, and are watching. We watch for a nation that could not help us and not save us. So
Hmm.
I really hope to see some sort of progressive action taken in addressing these issues in the United States of America and around the world. The world is watching.
Definitely. We look for solutions, and that may rely or result in reform with policing. I mean, definitely feels like a training thing, reform from the inside out. Like, this whole system needs to be, um, evaluated, and yeah, it needs work, right? For sure. Okay. Well, so I think we touched on everything we wanted to cover. So we'll probably be back to bring you guys more details on this matter. For Levi from the Forefront Radio, if you want to let us know where people can find your content.
So I'm Levi, the host of the Forefront Radio, talking about Black history according to the Bible. Who were you prior to slavery? Who were you prior to colonization? These answers and more can be seen and heard as you listen to the Forefront Radio, available on both Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. We also have a YouTube channel. You can find me on the Forefront Express on IG and the Forefront Media on Facebook. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So we will have those links posted in the show notes, guys. Please check out the Forefront Radio for his good content and the good work he is doing over there. And we thank you guys for listening. You guys take care. Be fine.